With the Wuthering Waves launch around the corner and the livestream revealing the banner lineups, the age-old gacha gamer question is back: should I pull or should I skip? We also got news of a new 5-star selector at 80 pulls, along with the novice banner from CBT2, which is pitied at 50, so I'll be covering that as well in this video. And I'll quickly go over the gacha system, but it's the same as CBT2, so if you want to skip ahead, here's a timestamp. But as you might have heard, Wuthering Waves implements the now commonplace 50-50 gacha system, so there's a 50% chance you get the new limited character or you get a standard 5-star character, with a hard pity at 80 pulls and possible soft pity at 60 to 75. If you lose the 50-50 rate up, the next 5-star character is guaranteed to be the limited one, so pretty much the same as all of the Hoyoverse games like Star Rail or Genshin. This means that as a low spender or free-to-play player, you may not have enough pulls to grab every single character from every banner, especially if you lose 50-50, not that I have an experience with that. But for the limited weapon, it's a 100% rate up with 80 hard pity, again with a possible soft pity of 60 to 75, so that's pretty nice. And at least for this current launch, we'll be getting a few 10 pulls from pre-registration and Kuro Generosity as well. And quick disclaimer, if you got a character you like, then pull them. This game is more skill and gear based anyways. All characters can clear with enough investment, so don't let some skinny Asian kid on the internet dictate how you enjoy your game if you like a certain character. Anyways, I'll be giving my thoughts on the 1.0 character pull value based on my experience from the CBT1 and CBT2, including Jiyan and Yinlin as well as their respective 4 stars. And then I'll talk about the weapon banner for them as well, and finally I'll give my recommendation for the standard banner selector at the end. Again, this is subject to change as we learn more about the game, but these are just my opinions from a meta perspective. And if you found this helpful, drop a like and subscribe. Alright, let's start with Jiyan's banner, which should drop at the beginning of the game, so on the 23rd. Our general, Jiyan, is the first limited 5-star character to grace the launch of the game. He's a pretty solid unit, just like his abs, what? And he features powerful grouping with his ultimate form, effortlessly pulling small and medium mobs with his normal attacks, and for Tower of Adversity, his kit demolishes any AoE mob waves. His damage and his ult form is also pretty solid, not insane in single target, but far from bad. And again, this is based on CBT2, which can be subject to change, but his ultimate takes a while to build, so he demands field time or energy regen. And with him being a 5-star, he's easier to build with innate crit rate. But as an arrow damage dealer, he has alternatives with the 4-star Yang, which you get for free at the beginning of the game, and the standard banner Jiyan as the 5-star standard. But they don't offer as much damage as him. Yang has grouping, but it's not as consistent, and Jiyan is more split between damage mitigation, grouping, and some damage. She also had her own problems regarding her cast time in CBT2, but we'll see if she gets buffed. So overall, our general Jiyan is a strong pull if you like him, but not a high priority pull if you don't. And like other games with 50-50 systems, Wuthering Waves probably won't release a must-pull character or your account is brick sort of thing, but it may feature some characters that are more universal or stronger in certain niches than others. For now, we won't have a benchmark, so that will take some time, but Jiyan doesn't do anything crazy outside of his crowd control, so it'll depend on future DPS units and what they can bring to the table. If they can do more than just crowd control, we'll have to see. And for the duplicates of Jiyan, they're okay, but nothing crazy. Getting one extra copy is his S1, which increases his quality of life, but it's not really significant. And it's more like if you get 2 copies or S2 and beyond, where there are some nice damage increases if you like them. Next up we have best girl and strongest fighter in history, Jin, the most powerful on-field DPS back in CBT1 and 2, due to her having no downtime with no cooldowns and a constant high single target havoc damage, compensated by the health drain mechanic. But if you manage the health drain mechanic properly and with proper dodging, this is not an issue, and the damage more than enough makes up for it. And in the late game, if you get hit once, it does like 8,000 damage and you're dead anyways, so the low health is not really much of an issue. And I've already gone in depth with Jin's kit in my guide with her that I made way back in CBT1. For the most part, it's still relevant, but assuming they don't hard nerf her, she's an amazing pickup. And I say if Jin's kit is not dramatically changed, I'm probably going to pick up a copy because I enjoy her playstyle, and her lack of downtime makes her busted and very comfy for pairing. Jin is very strong if you want to go for her, and will probably be strong for a very long time, just like the QQ or Zhongling of Wuthering Waves, but you don't need her to clear the endgame content, and the DPS are often the first to end up getting power crept anyways. And getting duplicate copies of her is always good. All are great damage increases outside of her S3 or 3rd duplicate, but yeah, I could talk about her all day, so let's just move on. Mortify is another solid 4-star, and he's arguably one of the best off-field sub DPSs in the game. Basically, his kit is fusion damage with off-field coordinated attacks with his ultimate, and burst damage detonation with his skill. and with an energy regen weapon, he gets his ultimate back super fast, allowing him to have near permanent uptime with his ultimate. If you played Genshin, he's very similar to Xingqiu, but for fusion damage. And getting extra copies of him is also pretty nice. His first dupe S1 gives him even more synergy and uptime with his ult coordinated attack, proccing on your active character skill. It's pretty nice for characters who don't basic attack often, although you really shouldn't be using him with characters that don't really basic attack. And his S2 or 2 duplicates is a nice quality of life, but it's fairly minor. And S3 and above is just a solid damage increase, with S4 allowing him to be off field longer if needed for the rotation. Mortify also synergizes really well with Yinlin and Jiyan since they basic attack often, and Mortify doesn't really take that much field time from either of them. Overall, he's just a really good universal off-field sub DPS for any team that basic attacks for the early all the way till endgame. And lastly, we have Qixia, one of the free units we get from the beginning of the game, and getting her on the banner is therefore inherently less valuable. She's a ranged fusion damage DPS, and her kit is kind of rough to use due to her continuous field time requirement with her skill being a channel, and she lacks a way to parry outside of echo abilities due to being a ranged unit. And overall, her damage is okay, but nothing to really write home about, and the channel can be interrupted, so that's kind of annoying. Her dupes are also alright, but nothing to write home about, so just some nice quality of life with minor damage increases, and that makes her an okay unit, but not amazing. So overall, the banner is pretty great. Jiyan is a solid unit, strong in AoE, decent in single target, and Yinlin and Mortify are cracked, with great sequence upgrades if you get multiple duplicates, with only Qixia duplicates being the weaker pull in this banner. Next, let's cover Yinlin's banner, and then we'll compare the two afterwards. Yinlin's banner should arrive a few weeks after Jinyan's around mid-June for the second half of this patch. She's Vera's hot cousin from PGR. God damn, I'm sorry. Yinlin is a very strong Electro sub DPS. I'd say she's the strongest in the game back in CBT 1 and 2, with great single target and amazing AoE Electro damage. Her abilities basically let her mark and chain link enemies to do AoE off-field damage when allies hit them, while also dealing heavy burst damage herself with her ultimate, without needing to be on field for very long. And when Yinlin swaps out, she buffs the next Electro character's ultimate and Electro damage for a brief period, solidifying herself as a crucial Electro sub DPS for characters like Kalcharo and Yuanwu, which we'll talk about next. With her being a 5-star character, she's also easier to build with innate crit rate and crit rate passives. She also doesn't have any specific alternatives. You can run her with Yuanwu to support Kalcharo, and her energy problem isn't as prevalent due to her off-field damage if I remember correctly. Yinlin herself is an incredible pull, and for those who care about the meta, you should be looking to pick her up. But again, you won't die if you skip her, unless you're down bad and you lose a 50-50, then I don't know, maybe you won't. And as for her duplicates, they're all solid damage increases if you're committed to tying up Yinlin to your wall. Next up we have Yuanwu. We get a free copy of him by clearing stage 3 of the tower, but otherwise he's a really good sub DPS unit that doesn't need much investment to be good. And since he's defense scaling, you should definitely have pieces that he can use. In the rotation, he just drops a skill, which is a field, and swaps out, letting that field do coordinated attacks with the active character as long as they hit the target. The trigger condition is a lot easier to activate compared to Mortify, who needs the active character to use basic attacks, but the trade-off is that Yuanwu's coordinated attacks don't hit as frequently as Mortify since it has a short trigger cooldown. So, Yuanwu is much more universal, but the skill field range can be problematic if the boss flies around and moves away from the field. Finally, once you swap him back in, his gauge will be filled, and then you can deal additional damage on the skill cast. He also gives interrupt resist with his ultimate, which is also very useful. And with synergy with Yinlin as well, he's a perfect candidate for this banner. That being said, we already get one copy for free, and getting duplicates for him isn't really a large buff since they mainly buff his own personal damage and not the off-field damage. But his S3 or third duplicate is a nice damage increase for his off-field coordinated attacks. So overall, a great sub DPS that has low field time like Mortify, but doesn't need duplicates since we already get him for free with the tower game mode. And if you do get duplicates, then hope to get at least S3. Next up, we have Taochi, a defensive havoc damage bruiser. Her kit combo needs a lot of setup for her forte circuit, or basically core passive, and her attacks are quite slow, making her feel a bit clunky to play. She feels like a unit that wants to be hit and also on field, but at the same time she does low and slow damage, which kind of makes her feel more mediocre with no specialized niche, but I have seen some people who like playing her. I personally don't think she brings a lot of value to the team, so I wouldn't rate her as high. She does have a decent outro swap off passive that increases the next character's heavy attack damage, so characters like Sunhwa will appreciate her, but otherwise she's just kinda meh. And as for her duplicates or sequences, it doesn't really help as much since it doesn't change the way her kit functions, but if you like her, then I understand where you're coming from. I'm just speaking from a pull value meta perspective. And next up we have Alto, which is a decent but niche arrow sub DPS that can support other arrow damage dealers such as Jiyan, Yang, or Jianshin. You basically pop them in, use your skill, basic attack through it, run through it, and then swap out to proc his outro skill to buff the arrow damage of the next team member. Alto does need more field time compared to other sub DPSs like Wanwu or Mortify, and due to that I don't really like him as much, but technically he can work in an arrow specific team. And as for sequences, they don't help that much since you're mainly using him as a swap buffer with his outro skill, but they're nice for his personal damage if you care about that. In summary, I'd rate Yinlin's banner pretty good, but not great, only because her 4 stars are weaker. Yinlin herself is a very strong limited unit and carries the banner, but the other 4 stars just don't need duplicates to be good, so it lowers the overall value of the banner significantly. So I guess that's just how they balance the banner. But if you want to get Yinlin, then go for it. She's strong and worth picking up, but pray you get her early. And comparing the 2 banners, I'd say between Yinlin and Jiyan, Yinlin is more future-proof since she can sub DPS with off-field damage and has low field time requirements for the strong damage that she dishes out. And since 4 stars are not guaranteed to be the one you want, for example you could keep pulling Chishas and not get a single Donjin or Mortify on Jiyan's banner, going for the guaranteed limited character and hard saving for Yinlin could be the safer route. But both banners are good, so in the end, it depends on your preference. Personally, I would try to snipe Donjin or Mortify with some pulls and save all the rest for Yinlin, but knowing me, I might pull Jiyan too because he's badass and his ult hits different. We'll see. Anyways, that's my personal plan. Since we get a lot of free pulls from the pre-registration, the launch of the game, and all the content in it, we should have enough to pity a 5-star and have some left over. Now let's quickly cover the weapon banners. Now these are at 100% rate up with the 80 hard pity. Starting with Jiyan's weapon, it's a nice damage amp to his overall kit, granting crit damage and basically a permanent damage buff during his ultimate since it converts all of his attacks into heavy attacks. It also evens out his crit ratio since he has crit rate innately. It could technically be used on Kalcharo as well, but you need pure crit rate substats since he already ascends crit damage. And Kalcharo also doesn't always use heavy attacks, so the passive isn't fully useful, but it's a good stat stick. But of course, Jiyan also does have weapon alternatives. The Battle Pass weapon grants crit rate and general attack bonuses, so it's a great alternative for light spenders. You could also use the standard banner 5-star Broadblade if you picked it up. It gives some energy to build his ult faster, while also granting some attack bonuses, and it has a strong base attack to begin with because it's a 5-star. But you'll need crits from somewhere else, so just keep that in mind. Otherwise, pick up any 4-star Broadblade that has attack as the main stat. I believe the craftable is also one of the attack main stats, so you can use that if you're free to play. The ones with energy regen, although comfy, at the same time you're losing out on some damage, so may not be worth using. As for the other 4-star weapons on the banner, the variation is pretty decent for energy regen for Catalyst or Rectifier supports. Characters like Verena appreciate this a lot, so it's pretty good for her. And the Hollow Mirage works on Yanmu, but it's not his best in slot, but it can be decent for Lingyan or Jianshin if you don't have anything else. And as for Yinlin's weapon banner, it gives her additional crit rate, so you'll be looking for more crit damage substats for her gear, because she already has crit rate innately. And outside of that, it can be used on Encore, which is nice since she doesn't have crit rate stats naturally and the attack buff can be useful when she's using her ult. But Yinlin does have alternatives in the form of her Battle Pass weapon, which is a pretty solid choice for the crit rate, so again you need to build more crit damage, and the passive also works nice to ult and swap off, letting the off-field coordinated attacks benefit from the attack bonus. The standard 5-star weapon is alright, she doesn't need the energy regen main stat, and she can basic a bit to proc the mark, but she doesn't really need to stay on field to begin with, so I wouldn't go out of my way to pick it up, but you can use it on her if you have it. Otherwise, the free-to-play craftable for the increased attack is always nice. Energy regen isn't really needed on Yinlin from my experience, and you want the damage instead. So for the 4-star weapons, the Jinsho Keeper is a pretty good consultation prize for Yinlin's swap sub DPS playstyle if you don't get her signature weapon. The Cadenza is insanely good for Mortify, it smooths out his rotation a ton, allowing him to just skill and then ult and have almost permanent uptime. Highly recommend you grab this for him. And the Lunar Cutter is a fairly universal weapon for all sword users like Donjin or Yang, but not the best even when compared to the other specialized 4-star swords. And now let's talk about the free 5-star standard character selector. Basically, after you do the novice missions, which is 50 pity and has reduced pull cost, and you pull your standard 5-star character, you'll unlock the selector banner, which you can pull up to 30 more times to pick up another standard character of your choosing. Verena is the best pick here, hands down, due to her basically being able to swap in, use a charge attack, and then swap off to give the team a free 20% attack boost. She also has a free revive for harder boss fights, so for example, if someone in your team dies, they'll come back with 1 HP, but this is a 10-minute cooldown. Overall, due to the low field time and high buffs, as well as her being able to heal, she's the #1 pick if you care about the meta. Otherwise, Kalcharo would be my second pick due to his high electro damage uptime and synergy with Yinlin as the main DPS. And the rest are honestly up to you if you really like them, but they're not top priority. 1010 does have a video going more in depth about each of them if you want to check it out. But yeah, I'll just leave it there for now. And finally, since you get a free 5-star weapon at level 45, I highly recommend picking up the standard sword just because it has a crit rate substat, which helps a lot with building, and there's a lot of users that can utilize it, including Jin, the Rover, which everyone has, Sunhua, which everyone has, and Yang, which everyone has. And yeah, that's basically all my thoughts for the upcoming banners. I don't think I missed anything. As I learn more, I'll update the pinned comments for any corrections, but these are mainly my current opinions pre-launch from playing the CBT, as well as talking to creators like stepbro and 1010. And at the end of the day, we're still playing a gacha game, so don't spend out of your own means. Keep in mind, 4 stars are not guaranteed, they're just rate up, but if you miss them, they'll rotate back, and you can always get them from standard anyways, so don't FOMO them. I'll be streaming Wuthering Waves all weekend, starting from release, or maybe the day after release, we'll see. But do stop by at twitch.tv/spider2b or the YouTube channel if you want to check that out. And thank you to my GigaChat YouTube members and Twitch subs and donators. And as usual, the like and subscribe, it really does help the channel, and I appreciate it. You can ask any questions in the comment section or in the Discord at dis.gg/spider2b, and you can follow me on Twitter for any other updates. But I'm tired as fuck, so thank you for watching, good luck on your pulls rovers, and I'll see y'all in Wuthering Waves.